I get this kind of the change of temperature every year. I get this little chesty cough every single year. I used to be a heavy smoker years ago. Haven't smoked for 11 years. But I was a rock musician, singer, touring, and so everybody just smoked, and I smoked as well.
Oh, yeah.
And so every year I get this heavy cold or cough around about September, October. Now the issue now is I work in healthcare. We're in the middle of a COVID crisis, so you daren't tell anybody you've just got a random everyday cold because
Right.
they assume it's something else, and I get tested for that stuff. I don't have that, but um, yeah, it's just one of those weird things when you feel a little slightly tickle in your throat on the bus or on the tube. You're thinking, don't let that out. You're gonna clear this
Yeah.
carriage. You will clear this carriage.
It's tough. You want to hold your sneeze or your cough because you'll get the eyes on you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and you grew up in Scotland, right? And the UK is a damp and sort of it's a sneezy place.
it is. But I'll tell you what. I live in Washington State now, and it's very similar.
Okay, okay. So
Right now outside, it's absolutely bucketing rain, and
really,
we had that influx of hot weather, and now we're in the cold weather, and of course, like that fluctuation you were talking about with the
yeah,
cold to or the hot to the cold, I get the same thing every year.
I get exactly the same. And well, look, Scotland to Washington State, out of the frying pan into the fire, but more of the same. And I've spent a long time in Scotland hiking about and not all over the place. In Venetia, mainly in the surrounding areas, Galloway. Um, really love that place. It's a beautiful place and very underpopulated, similarly to Washington, actually.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And talking about, um, I know who you are, obviously, because of the Olympic project, um, because of people like Cliff and Bobo and the rest, and that's the side of you I've seen there. But you've been an avid researcher with the Olympic project since 1997. Now, what amazes me about that is it's because you had a Bigfoot sighting yourself. And most people, a lot of researchers I speak to these days, actually have never, like similar to myself, have never had a sighting. They want it, they're looking for that type of thing. So, could you tell us a bit about your sighting? And at the
Yeah,
end of it, once it was there and you were in the moment, did you want it or did you not want it?
great question. But real quick, I actually did not join the Olymp project to about 2012.
Oh,
I've
really?
been, but I've been actively researching since about
Ah,
'97.
okay.
Okay,
Sorry. Yeah.
at that time I was in California, up and down Yosemite and those areas, doing investigations. I moved to Oregon in 2008. Started investigating out in Oregon.
Ah,
Wasn't until now to get to my encounter. It wasn't until 2011 in Oregon, Mount Hood, that I had my encounter, and I wasn't doing anything bigfooting. I mean, I wasn't doing anything bigfooty.
yeah.
I was on a backpacking trip, a remote backpacking trip, fishing some high mountain lakes with two friends, and that's actually what's propelled me to eventually look out other groups because I was a solo guy. And after several months after my encounter, I realized I can't do this by myself. This is
Mm,
not an individual effort. You have these encounters, and for those that have an encounter, an actual sighting where they know what they saw,
mm,
either they don't want anything to do with it, don't want to talk about it, or they're interested but they just do online stuff and talk to people,
mm,
or they dive head in, which I even did more so after my encounter for several months because I thought, shoot, I know where these things are at. I saw one. Two of my buddies had the same experience I did. I know where they're at. I can prove this. And for several months, I much later, because I didn't go back for over a month, but once I got into it again, I realized that I could not do it by myself. This is a group effort, and
mm.
at that time, I thought I knew what I was doing, but honestly, I didn't know what I was doing. So now my encounter, been researching since about '97, up and down California, then moved to Oregon, and from 2008 to 2011, I was doing a lot of my own research. I had met some friends through work, and we wanted to tail end of 2007, August of 2011, we wanted to go hiking to some remote mountains areas
Mm.
like Mount Hood, go find a lake or two to go fish for some high mountain trout. And we picked up this location in Mount Hood, and we hiked out to this location. built our camp around one of the particular lakes. There's about 6 lakes in this area, and they're all spread out by half mile to a mile or two, and in a couple of cases over 7 miles away.
Mm.
And we were going to visit a few of these lakes to fish. Well, after we had set up our camp that day, back in August of 2011, we went to go find one of these other lakes, and long story short, we ended up getting lost. We ended up hiking about 17 miles up and down ridges and through meadows, off trail, on trail. One of my buddies was from Boston, here in the States. He had never really done any backpacking. He was definitely afraid of bears, and he literally brought a pot and pan, and he banged it around to scare off the bears. And that got very annoying, especially because we're lost, we're running low on water, and he's banging pots. And I said, yes, there's bear up here. Loads of bear up here. We saw bear scat, bear sign. And I said, knock it off. We I do pack a weapon when I'm out in the wild. So I just do. I worry about bear and of course, the human element. Bumped into a lot of weirdos over the years. So I wasn't worried about animals. And I said, bears tend to run away from you 9 times out of 10, or they're around you and you never see them, just like a cougar.
Yeah.
So 17 miles later, we eventually make it back to camp, back to our, and we're exhausted. It's getting dark. We decide to finish setting up camp, cook a meal, build a big fire, and go to bed. And once again, my buddy Ian, who's afraid of bears and animals, built this huge fire. I mean, huge fire, right next to a lake. So we're safe. It's not going to be, it is August, which is kind of a dangerous month to have wildfires, in the wild. But didn't think much about it. He builds this big fire. We all go to bed. And that night, a buddy and I wake 3 separate tents. We're all in our separate tent, but we both wake up to what we hear is what sounds like rock clanking.
Okay.
And it's coming from a distance, but getting closer and closer, and then it stops. And my buddy Mitch, who's one of the other guys with me, yells over, whispers over, "Hey, did you hear that?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "What do you think it is?" I said, "I don't know. Could it be an elk, antler or something?" Sound like rock on rock. But I'm trying to rationalize this. This is about 1:30 in the morning. And then we started hearing movement up this little bit of a hill surrounding our camp. We had a low-lying area, and we had a high-lying area around us. And we started hearing movement, sticks breaking, and then one crystal clear knock. I thought, well, hot dang, that's interesting, really interesting. And Mitch and I were laying there. Our buddy Ian is still out. He's snoring. He didn't hear anything. And that night, probably 15, 20 minutes later, we hear the rock clanking again. What we assumed was rock clanking, and it's getting further and further away. And that was it. So next morning we get up. We start kind of talking about it a little bit. Ian's like, I didn't hear anything. Mitch and I are like, well, who knows what. In the back of my head, I was kind of interested. I'm like, I've never heard anything like that in the woods before, ever. But I didn't see it, and I wasn't sure exactly what it was, but it didn't fit any animal up there that I knew of. But we were on a fishing trip, and not doing anything Bigfoot related. The other 2 guys with me are not into Bigfoot. One of the guys with me, Mitch, his girlfriend possibly saw Sasquatch years back and whatnot, but that's another story. So we go back out the following morning. We eat breakfast. We go out hiking. We find the other lakes. We did not get lost, and we fish. We catch our quarry. We come back to camp that evening, and we do the same thing. We build a big fire. We cook our fish. We kind of talk for a while, and then we settle in for the night and go back to bed. Well, about 1:32 in the morning again, once again, the following night, we hear that rock clanking start up again. And it's starting off far, and it's getting closer and closer. This time it sounded much louder. And as it gets closer, it stops once again. And around us, around this hillside around us, we hear sticks breaking, branches breaking, but it's much louder. It sounded almost aggressive. I don't know. I remember commenting at the time, is something knocking branches off the trees, or is it stepping on the underlying brush? Because up in the Mount Hood area, it's very moist, it's very wet. Even in the month of August, it can be so wet. A lot of large branches on the ground. So I assumed whatever this was stomping on the branches, moving all around us, back and forth, pacing. Well, that eventually stopped. And Mitch and I were talking, hey, it's back again. Whatever it is, it's back again. Ian, our third partner, is still asleep. And it got really quiet after that, after a couple minutes of this happening. And then you hear 5 in a row, what a lot of people call power knocks, and what I would call power knock. 5 in a row, super loud. You could hear it echo. You could feel it underneath your tent. It was hitting a tree, whatever this was, and I'll tell you in a minute what I know was hitting this tree so hard You could feel the vibration underneath your tent. By this time, nobody's going to sleep through this. My buddy Ian woke up and he goes, "What the, bleep bleep is that?" And I told him, shut up, be quiet, just listen, shush. And Mitch and I are kind of whispering back and forth. Wow. Then after those 5 knocks happen, it gets quiet again. And we hear something coming through the trees up high from the hillside, come through the trees, and then thud right next to my buddy's tent. And I knew exactly what it was, and he knew what it was. And he said something just threw a rock at us, because the way my buddy's tent was, it was right next to the lake, and it's a bunch of mud here. And you hear that rock hit the mud and just thud, that mud sound. But you hear it coming through the branches on the way down. And instantly then, I knew, I'm like, okay, we're either dealing with a person or we're dealing with possibly a Sasquatch. I mean, just based on everything. And I had never had a real encounter up until then. I think I've had some suspicious stuff, but this was what textbook. I mean, you got to be kidding me. But we're in a remote area. It's about 2 a.m. I'm thinking, wow, chances of a person, and we're armed. A lot of people up here in Washington and Oregon, and this thing happened in Oregon, carry weapons. So I'm like, is this a person? They're asking for it, and way out here. Anyways, that rock came into camp, and my buddy Ian starts freaking out because he was just like, wow, And I did a stupid thing at the time. I gave him a gun previously, a couple of days previously, and really had no business having one. And that was, looking back, that was a dumb thing. I know that.
Yeah.
I was just trying to comfort him because I was so sick of him banging pots.
Yeah.
And I said, you got nothing to fear. You really don't. We're in numbers here. We don't venture far apart. We're good. Anyways, I thought he might shoot somebody. So I'm about ready to get out of my tent and go over there, grab the gun away from him, tell him, if you're that scared, come over to my tent. We'll build up the fire. The fire was still going. And I thought, let's just build up the fire. Well, as I unzip my tent, my buddy Mitch is quiet over to the left of me, just quiet. I could tell he's pretty freaked out. And as I unzip my tent, I'm looking around because I really didn't want to get out of my tent, to be honest with you. But I thought, I'd rather not get shot at this point if he does something stupid. And so as I unzip my tent, I'm looking around and I don't see anything at first. I'm about to get out of the tent. And then from behind the tree, almost 12 o'clock in front of me, going up this game trail, I see something swaying behind this tree. And it's swaying. And what I basically see is a hand, an arm, a shoulder, and occasionally a head. And it's just doing this. And I could tell from the shape and the size of it, and it wasn't that far away. I could tell that it was not a person, that this thing was massive. And I don't know if it saw me. I don't know if it heard the tent unzip. But after a couple seconds of swaying back and forth, it peeled up. And that's when I got a better view of its back, and it peeled up and went down, or up the trail, and it disappeared. And that was it. I never did get out of my tent. I told Ian, calm down. But that time, after everything kind of stopped, nobody slept, but we just all stayed silent.
Yeah.
And a couple hours later, when daylight hit, we collectively, almost without saying anything, collected our stuff. And we were supposed to be there for about 3 nights. This is the second night. We decided basically, collectively, almost telepathically, let's get the heck out of here. And which we did. And that was the sum of my encounter. And there was some other stuff to it, but that was the sum of it. To answer your question, at that time, no, I did not. I was like, wow, I was not prepared for that. I thought I was. It's what a lot of people want, but when you're on and I wasn't even Bigfooting. I was on a fishing trip, but when it happened, like 2 a.m, you don't know what this thing wants. You don't know why it came back a second night. No, I thought we were going to die. I thought it's got even more aggressive for whatever reason. And I have my ideas as to why that happened. But yeah, that's, so no, looking back, I'm glad I had that experience, definitely. But then, no, not at all.
No, not in the moment. It's a funny thing actually that doesn't come up very often, and that's a fascinating experience. The the mild warnings the day before, and it's funny that a creature like that gives you a little sort of, hey, I'm not happy that you're here, so I'm letting you know I'm around. And then the next day gets a bit angrier and keeps going on, and it didn't stay as soon as you saw it. It left. You didn't hear any more noises that night. So, do you think that's the creature saying, so you get the point? You've seen me, I've seen you, I can head off now because you're going to go. Surely you're going to go. Would you think that's the point of the encounter? Do you think that was the the intention? I mean, obviously you don't know, but is that what you felt about the situation?
110%. At first, it took me a long time to come to that conclusion because everything I thought I knew, in reality, I don't think I knew anything.
Mm.
Not that I know anything now, but definitely then, I think getting up on that ridge line where people don't go. We got
Yeah.
lost. We're hiking. We're banging pots. I think that the subject matter, Sasquatch. I think there was Sasquatch up there. There's not many people have a 2-night experience or 2-night encounter or
Mm.
2-day encounter. That's kind of rare. But when it does happen, it's kind of the same MO. It escalates. And yeah, absolutely. I think we went somewhere, we bugged it, and it was like, get the heck out of here. And the first night, it thought maybe that would work. It didn't. They came
Yeah.
back the second night, and it escalated. So it worked. It could have came in and stomped our tents and tore us up, and who
Mm.
knows, but it didn't. And the rock didn't hit our camp or hit any tents. It landed next to a tent, and it's about a softball-sized rock. It could have done some
Mm.
damage. Little two-man tents, two-person tent could have done some damage, but it missed it. And yeah, I mean, and there was a possibility there was more than one. So,
Mm. Mm.
but it never physically harmed us. But it scared the bejeebies out of us. So the what we take as aggression, or some people call it a bluff, or maybe it's all of that. But it did work. We got out of there as soon as we could.
I mean, the behavior. I mean, this obviously not telling you this, you know this, but for people listening out there, I always feel that that type of behavior really denotes high intelligence, at least for an animal, that they would give you a break. I'm giving you a break. I'm letting you know. I'm letting you know here. I don't like you here. I want you to go. Um, they have the power, but I think in large, a Sasquatch not coming straight for you is actually maybe typical of wild animals as well. It doesn't want to enter into a risky situation. If they can observe humans, they probably have observed that they are armed, that they fire guns, that they've seen hunters, they've seen kills, etc. Well, I would assume that they have. So it's always a strange thing to me. Now, people talk about noises all the time. They talk about it here in the UK as well. I find it very hard to validate a lot of these reports these days because, unlike yours, that happened so long ago, the details are so commonly known now. So one of the things I was wondering with you guys in the Olympic project, I know that you take sightings and you've had experience. Many people have had experiences. How does that help you in determining whether the sighting that you're dealing with, that it's been handed to you, whether it's genuine or not? What kind of keys, what kind of um, red flags are you looking for when you're listening to one of these sightings, especially if there's knocks and clacks and tree peaking and things like that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, absolutely. So nowadays, the Olympic project as a whole, we used to do what I call a lot of ambulance chasing, going after reports, and we get a lot of
Mm.
reports in. Derek Randall's way before my time would do a lot of that. He, at the drop of a bucket, he would go out to Idaho, living in Montana or in Washington, excuse me. He would go out to Idaho. If there was an encounter in Idaho, he'd go. It doesn't matter where it was at, he'd drive. He came to the conclusion that he's had a lot of stuff happen in the Olympics, and that's our research hub. So, relatively speaking, now we don't do a whole lot of investigations, but
Mhm.
when we do, there are certain things. Nowadays, it's get for me. I think it's almost getting. It's hard, but it's almost easier because um, you have the invention of social media, you have TV, and a lot
Yeah.
of people want to, if they've had something happen, they want their piece of the pie, or if they've not
Mm.
had something happen. Well, they could be on a podcast. They can jump on YouTube. They can jump
Yeah.
on social media. They can and occasionally, get on a production on TV. And when I start seeing their eyes light up, I'm like, did they really have something happen? If
Mm.
they did, do I want to work with them? And so that's a red flag right off the bat. Also, I mean, just you've interviewed a ton, Andrew, a ton of people, and same here, hundreds of people through my podcast, through just
Yeah.
traveling, and you just get a feel for it. You just know
Yeah.
when someone's telling the truth, and then or when someone's deviating from the truth or exaggerating. And I think that's the biggest issue, really, is exaggeration. It's not so
Mm.
much a not so much people are lying. A lot of people have stuff happen, but they want to be validated. They want you to say this or that. And when you're kind of skeptical and you say, well, it could have been this, could have been that, then they kind of go, oh, well, I'll go find so and so because they'll believe me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
exaggeration, I think, plays a huge part, especially if you're not, they throw out the bait or whatever, and you don't grab it right away and reel it in. Then they're like, okay, well, maybe I kind of saw this or this happened. So
Yeah.
exaggeration is the huge issue, and I look for all of that stuff. I always like the individuals that you almost have to force it out of them.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
they've had something happen, and you're really intrigued. You heard it from a third party, and they say, yeah, go talk to so and so, and they're like, they don't really want to talk about it. I really value those individuals, and included, I've spoken to a lot of First Nations people,
Mm.
amazing stories. People from different walks of life, both academia, within the police department. A lot of people that have everything to lose and nothing to gain. Those are encounters and stories and people that I really lean on.
I do try to chase those sometimes. Those are the ones I will chase. The antagonistic witness, the witness who doesn't want to be a witness and has something to lose. That's like gold dust in this genre because if they'll speak to you, the one thing that used to make people speak, I noticed this a lot, was that once seen, what is seen cannot be unseen. So the individual has this life-changing experience, and regardless of the consequences they face, they can't stop talking about it because they're still shocked and amazed by this other aspect to life being a factor. Oh, there's another type of ape or something like that out there. This is an amazing thing. How could this be possible? I have to tell everybody, even if they think I'm a lunatic. But I'm a federal judge, that kind of thing. That's strong. I like that. I'll go with that every day. But of course, I used to say even one of the things I ask people very openly is, do you have um, do you have a mental health issue? In my questions, I'd say to them, it doesn't exclude you from having a sighting. It doesn't invalidate your sighting. But if your mental health issue is if it's delusional in nature, I'd really appreciate if you told me about it.
Yeah.
Is the sighting you had outside of the normal delusion you might have, etc. You can still have a sighting, and there's that stretch occasionally, very
Right.
rare. But mostly people that come to me, they've seen something and it's troubled them, and they'll try to. The true individuals, I think, will often try to posit another explanation for their sighting, even though they don't believe that. Oh, well, it could have been a bear. Only it didn't look like a bear, but maybe it was a bear.
Well said. Yeah.
So on and so forth. Yeah. Now, when it comes to research, there's a lot of citizen scientists. There's a lot of us out there now um, doing this kind of work. Do you think, in general, your average citizen scientist or Bigfoot researcher is helping the genre or doing harm to the genre? And what kind of basic tools in the field do you think could help everybody out there to make an impact, make a difference?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question because I think it has citizen science, because there's been influx of that word used, citizen science. It seems to be, I don't know, really either 2017 or 2018 really is when that word really started popping up.
That's when I heard it.
Yeah, citizen science. I mean, it's always been around, but now,
Yeah.
now the investigator or the Sasquatch enthusiast or the researcher has really started, and I've used it too. I'm a big fan of citizen science. I
Yeah.
think it needs to be more of it. Now, I think that word's been tossed around too loosely nowadays. Now everybody's like, as long as you have tagline hashtag citizen scientist,
Mm.
uh, I don't know if many people have actually looked up what a citizen science is or what it's about. Think, oh, I just got to collect this correctly and be a keen observer. And yeah, but technically you're supposed to be working with academia almost directly. That's the whole
Mm.
point of citizen science is you collect data for scientists, for academia. And that's a huge issue because uh, this goes twofold because you could be an earnest citizen scientist but not have any connection with academia because they want nothing to do with it.
Mm.
So it's a conundrum. It really is a conundrum. I'm fortunate, and I think we're getting more and more fortunate as a community. I'm not a big Sasquatch research community guy. I don't believe there's a huge community out there. There's factions,
Mm.
but no, I think I think it's done a lot of good for the subject matter,
Yeah.
because I know of a lot of academic individuals that have reached out to me. I'm not having to do as much reaching out, which
Mm.
has always been the case. Now it seems like a lot of academia, a lot of up and newcomers, a lot of people have been interested, are coming out of the woodwork, or coming out of the closet, so to speak,
Yeah.
and reaching out to other people. I work with an organization called Project Zoobook, and we have a lot of academic individuals from all sorts of sciences that we have on, and we just have, it's kind of a think tank, and we discuss stuff. So I see a positivity within, the usage of citizen science. But I think also, if you're going to use the word citizen science and you're going to be a citizen scientist, you need to look up the definition and really try to reach out and not
Okay.
only do your field studies as scientifically as you can, but also reach out to academia and see, okay, how can what programs, I mean, maybe it's got nothing to do with Sasquatch. What programs
Mm.
can you work in that certain science groups, certain academia are working on, that you can help, whether they're looking at bear tracks, they just need people out there casting bear tracks, or measuring bear tracks, or studying a certain type of toad. There's a lot we can do as laymen, as citizen scientists, to help out academia and get their trust. And I'm sorry, Andrew, what was your the other part of your question there?
Oh, it was what tools do you think that they could
Oh,
bring to the field to carry out that function efficiently? So research methods. So I used to always copy Meldrum's quick casting with
yeah,
the self-insulating foam, minimally expanding insulating foam, with a piece of cardboard and the little stone or the paperweight to stick on top. Put two slats of cardboard into my backpack, and it's really light. And because in the UK, as you remember from growing up here, it rains all the time. You got to get that casted before you can and get it out quickly. It's not
yeah,
going to stay dry. I think 5, 10 minutes I've left it there and get great casts from that. So that was what I was advising people in the UK. So look, we don't have really any good footprints. We don't have anything up there. Get your little medical baggies and your tweezers and your sterile gloves. If you can get a pair of those, and yeah, collect hairs, collect fecal matter that looks unusual, but look up examples of regular fecal matter that may be found in the British countryside. If you're sending badger scat off to some lab and paying several £100s to get it analyzed, well, that's just a waste of money. But yeah, go equipped is what I was saying, and then make it light, make it easy for yourself, but at least have the ability to take data if you come across any. In the US, I think the situation is different. The amount of footprints that have been found seem to be vast.
yeah.
So what things apart from Jeff's minimally expanding insulating foam and the cardboard and the paperweight would you suggest that people take out with them?
Yeah, yeah. Real quick. So one of the issues I find with investigators, researchers, and I learned this the hard way, is that they're ill prepared for their environment.
Yeah.
I think you got to be prepared. There's so much, like, especially, I mean, actually, whether it's the southern or eastern states of the United States, or the western coast here, or western states, or even central, whether you're talking about even just North America in general. There's so
Mhm.
many dangers out there. Weather can change in a heartbeat. There's a lot of predators out there.
Yeah.
You can. I always tell people, before you ever enter the field, you got to first of all, tell somebody where you're going.
Mhm.
Have a plan. Have an agenda. I'm going to go from point here to here. I will not stray. If I do, I will tell somebody. Know the area. If I, look at maps, look at the
Mhm.
geography. Have a compass. Have all of the essentials. Prepare like something bad's going to happen. You're
Mhm.
hoping nothing will, but prepare like something will. You want food. You want to have some way to start a fire. You want to have the right clothing. How many people up here in the Pacific Northwest get lost without the right clothing or food? I'm just going on a day hike, and then a bear jumps out, or a cougar jump, and they run off trail, or they fall off a cliff, or what, or
Mhm.
all those scenarios happen. They just happen, and people don't expect it. So prepare, make yourself a plan. Make sure if you can, go with somebody else if you can. I know
Mhm.
that that's always possible, but just have a plan. Now, if you're comfortable with where you're going and you have all this stuff and you've practiced it, your mind will be clear. You'll just go into the woods going, okay, I'm prepared for any scenario. I don't have to worry about where my car keys are at, or where I parked, or where I'm going or you're already prepared. You're just prepared. And that right there is a foundation for research in general. I don't care what you're studying. After that, yeah, you want to start looking at, what do I have on my backpack if I come across something? How prepared am I to take a photo? Do I have a GoPro running? Do I have audio running? I think audio is huge. The minute you get on a trail or get out, and David Ellison Project taught me this, start recording. Start recording. A lot of times you don't hear stuff, and a lot of times something will happen and that's it, but then all you got is another story. Record as soon as you hit that trail or as soon as you're out camping or whatever. And, if you can, have a camera running. I mean, you just never know what you can capture. Even if you get a cool bear, I mean, that's just something, okay, look what I got. That's a start, and then you want to have casting material, and you want to have, like you were mentioning earlier, you want to have some sort of data collection kit, tweezers, gloves, all that stuff. And I can go all the details of that, but just look up a proper forensic data collection kit or wildlife kit. It's easily found. You can make your own. You can purchase them.
I've just put my own together. It's pretty easy.
Yes, exactly. So and you got to take into your mind here, how much weight do I want to pack? Because a lot of the stuff, when I go camping, my pack is so freaking heavy. Because I have all my clothing and food and all that, right? Just your basic camp gear, tent, sleeping bags. But then I have batteries and I have cameras and therms and all that adds weight. And you really got to be careful what you're packing and think about the weight on your pack, whether it's a day trip or it's a overnighter or a longer expedition. So weight's another issue. But I can't stress enough, before you start getting into this field and really want to do some serious investigations and research, is just be prepared for an area. Make sure you have all the basics. If you have all the basics, everything will come after that. Basics, water. Look at the geography. Where's the nearest body of water? How many miles when I get to this point am I away from the nearest body of water or the nearest road? If you already have that all in your mind and you look for certain landmarks, I'm telling you, everything will just start to come to you naturally. You'll feel comfortable out there. And your loved ones won't be so worried about where you're at. They know that you're well prepared.
I think that's perfect advice. And I used to say to everybody that I used to go out at night by myself on quite a few little jaunts. It's not the same in the British countryside, obviously, as it would be in the US. It's wherever you're going, it's most definitely simple to get back if you know your way. But in the dark, going out, investigating all alone at night, it's not really the wisest thing to do. And I stopped it. I had a few spooky adventures, and I thought, you're being silly. You're being stupid, actually, just because you haven't experienced it. And once again, what happened to you would cross my mind. Well, Andy, actually, everybody thinks they want an experience, but once you're in the experience, you have no choice, and you're faced with possibly a wild animal. You have to decide what to do about it, and it has to decide what to do about you. And actually, in that situation, you are both individuals. It's the same with a bear or something. Every bear is an individual, right? Has behavioral characteristics like a human has, but has choices that it can make, individual choices. So, do you really want that situation once you can't get out of it?
Exactly.
And I started taking a friend, so because that's just a wise grown-up thing to do. It just took me a long time to get there. Talking about what is Sasquatch, what is Bigfoot, there are, of course, many similar animals described around the world. There's the Yowie, there's the Yeti, the Yeren, the Keptar, the Woodwoes, as we would traditionally have referred to it here in the UK, which may or may not be a creature, although there are plenty of sightings, it seems, to back that up anecdotally. What do you think this creature is? For your own money, where is your money? Obviously, you're in the flesh and blood biological camp, as am I. I think if something behaves like an animal and lives in the wood and needs food and water, we can sort of rule out portals and UFOs and the rest of it. So, what do you think this animal is? Where's your money?
It's probably the question I hate the most, because I don't know. But I'll tell you, I do have my ideas. I do believe it's a lineage of some sort of primate, and that's kind of where I leave it. And a lot of people get offended when you say primate. But I mean, if you look at us, I mean, I think I'm doing the creature or the entity service here. It's very higher intelligence. very high. I don't doubt that. It's a master of its environment. I think they're small in number. I think they're much smaller in number than people want to give credit for. But I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. Maybe that's by design. Maybe not. But definitely, I mean, is it like an Optimism or something of that nature? I don't know. And what I do know is that they exist. And after that, I got my theories, my ideas, and I don't know much more than that. But all of their behavior, working on, over the years, the Olympic Project's been working on these ground nests. And just back in February, right before CB19 hit, a buddy and I walked up on something actively building one of these. We didn't see it, but we heard the crashing. It sounded bipedal. It was massive. It circled around behind us. We come across a brand new, first time in 4 years, brand new nest. And this nest, I was just completely floored. We've had Dr. Meldrum looking at some of these nests and other anthropologists and zoologists, and they all say, yeah, I mean, it's not bear behavior. It's very primate-like. In fact, two of the zookeepers we brought out from a certain zoo here in the United States both said they could see characteristics in those nests that were built, massive nests, that looked like individuals. They could see individuals making certain nests, and they work with chimpanzees and bonobos and gorillas. So there's a lot of very primate-like behavior I see in Sasquatch. But then again, there's a lot of human-like things I see in the Sasquatch. Choices like throwing rocks, not hitting a tent, hitting a tree, bluff charges, just how many hunters, and I'm a hunter myself, how many hunters have looked through a scope or seen one in person and said, I could have pulled the trigger, but didn't because I'm looking at the eyes.
Yeah, you hear that again and again. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how you could take a shot at anything like that anyways. It's not on your it's not your quarry. But so many times so I lean towards some sort of upper primate. Where that falls in line, is it closer to Gigantopithecus blacksea? Is it closer to like Australopithecine, or I don't know, but it falls in there somewhere. Very intelligent. It's learned to avoid man, and why is that? Why does it avoid man? Most animals do avoid man. We're destructive, but a lot of animals do avoid us, but we see them.
Yeah,
that tells me they're smaller in number, they're more recluse, and they're that much smarter.
Would you say possibly nocturnal or semi-nocturnal?
I'd say semi. There's most sightings occur during the day. Okay. A good friend of mine, actually, he's out your way, Squatchermetrics. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's out your way. He's in London, and that's where he lives. He stayed out
far from me.
Yeah. Oh, no. Squatchermetrics. He's on Facebook, and actually he's on Instagram. But he's a data guy. He's data-driven. He had an encounter on a trip out to the States, I believe, in Florida, many years ago. Fantastic individual. He used to be like a bit of a soccer analysis guy for the Premier League. Yeah.
I have to talk.
Oh, you have to. He just probably one of my favorite people on planet Earth, and so about the data, because like he says, the truth is in the pudding, and the data doesn't lie. You don't fudge with the data. You just bump in the numbers. Boom, they're a fantastic guy. But once again, I mean, for me, I see this as the data specifically as the future of Sasquatch research, because we're now getting into, especially with what Squatchermetrics is doing, and he's on the other side. He's across the pond, but he's still doing amazing things with the numbers. He collects so much data, and all the data that's put into his analysis and whatnot, or analysis of the data, has been investigated. It's not like, okay, so and so calls him up, I had a sighting. No, it has to been investigated. So the data is profound, and it's really helped my research. What's the best time to see a Sasquatch? Well, actually, in certain areas it can be 2:00 in the afternoon, while other areas it's going to be different. So I don't think Sasquatch is mainly nocturnal, but I think they do a lot of their stuff at night, based on a lot of the data I've looked at and my own experiences.
I wonder whether there's perhaps it's a lot of the hunting takes place at night, and perhaps that's at certain times of the year when they need that kind of input, protein, etc. Who knows? I'll definitely have to have a chat with him if he's in London. He's my neighbour. I have to talk. We've got plenty to talk to Squatchermetrics. If you're out there, we've got plenty to talk about. We really have. One of the things that really fascinates me about North America, actually, and the USA in particular, is, and one of the things we Brits just don't seem to grasp, is the sheer size of available wilderness, even in areas that you would assume would be built up, like places like Atlanta, for example.
Mm.
You wouldn't expect it to have as much forest as they have, or Pennsylvania, or New England. That was a real shocker to me. It's all forest. There's no
Right.
people there. It's just all forest. Or the Pacific Northwest. People talking about planes going missing there and never being found.
Yeah.
Passenger planes.
Over 56.
Wow. I mean, that's that's
Stationary objects.
yes, of passenger jet size. So there could be, I mean, never mind Sasquatch. There could be the descendants of those surviving passengers living on somewhere in the woods. You know,
Oh,
it's
that's
just
fun.
like the Amazon. I mean, people just don't get what is really out there. And we look at Google Maps and we zoom in on your places you want to look at, and you could be forgiven for thinking that the world is explored, and especially the modern world, the one we know about in the West, especially the Western countries, places like Australia and the USA and Canada, they're vast, unexplored wildernesses with nobody walking about in them normally. When do people just generally go off path and head off into the forest or into the woods, into the wilderness? People don't do that. Not even there, not even hunters. You've got roots, right?
Right.
You're not just going to stray off the path and walk into the forest to see what's there. Why would you do that? So if something is there, how would you know?
Well, I
Right?
will tell you this, uh, and you're absolutely right. The 99% of people, they stay on trails, and they don't venture off trails, other than to maybe urinate or something of
Yeah.
that nature. The vast majority, they stick to trails, they stick to campgrounds. Even hunters, up here in the Pacific Northwest, just even about 10-minute drive from me, I can get out in a remote area, hit the trails. But if I get off trail, I got certain brush. I got huckleberry and salal. The huckleberry is 9 feet tall. I can't see a couple feet in front of me. There's no trails. And in certain times of year, you're dealing with bears and cougars, and you're also dealing with bees and wasps and all sorts of stuff. The in People just don't do that. Now, Millennium Project, we do, but we do
Yeah.
in groups. I think that's why we've come across nests. They're way off trail. They're not on a trail. They're way in these back remote areas, hard to get to. And we could argue if they got anything to do with Sasquatch or not. But large nests that nobody really knows what the heck they are.
Yeah.
So that is off trail. It is hard to get to, very hard to get to, and difficult. But once again, your original point, I remember moving to California and not really appreciating, even in Britain, in Scotland at the time.
Yeah.
I lived on a little island called Isla off the west coast of Scotland.
I know,
Never
Ella. Yeah.
appreciating, yeah, that's where I used to live. Never appreciating the vastness. And when I
Mm.
got to California and I started going around the Sierras, San Bernardinos, and Yosemite, I fell in love. I'm like, and then getting to Oregon, I'm like, oh my, and then Washington, and then British Columbia, been all around the place, and
Mm.
the amount of vastness and forest where people don't go,
Mm.
the amount of beauty, and sometimes you're thinking, am I the first person to see this in ever or last? Vastness, and there could be anything out there.
Yeah. Yeah, there certainly could. I think it's a fascinating subject. Talking about these nests actually and stick structures in general, what is the form of the nest? Is it more of a circular woven, or how would you describe that? Intertwined branches in a large circular pattern with bedding in between, or is it underneath stick structures and teepees and the rest of this? Or what are these nests like, the ones that you're finding?
Yeah, all of these nests are primarily made out of huckleberry branches, anywhere from a quarter inch to 2 inches in
Uh-huh.
diameter. There's no the only canopy, anything above it is just the tree line. It's just the
Uh-huh.
big Douglas firs and cedars and stuff. So there's nothing structure wise
I
above these.
see.
The nests themselves, they're ground nests. They're uh, woven. They're actually kind
Mm,
of strung together. In some
okay.
cases, you have, as Dr. Meldrum found out after we deconstructed one, you have huckleberry branches pushed into the ground, and then the nest formulated around those
Wow.
huckleberry branches.
Okay.
Um, and they're over a foot in depth. and sometimes anywhere from about 3 feet wide to 9 feet wide. Some are circular, some are more oval shaped, but still kind of circular, but more oval shaped.
What kind of height are we looking at?
If you're looking at the size of them, they're on the ground, but they're about over a foot in depth. Sometimes a foot and a half.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're all the way around, and inside it's like a mattress. You got a lot of leaves that have been plucked up, the huckleberry leaves plucked off and laid down, and you get a lot of smaller branches. You don't have big branches in the mattress portion. We do have on the outside just the larger branches, which kind of hold it. And up here in the Northwest, it's really wet. This keeps you dry, insulated. You have a canopy overhead. It keeps the rain from really penetrating. It's very strategically, these nests are very strategically placed. You got a seasonal salmon creek with salmon coming up there. You have all these ungulates in this area, all of the huckleberries. This time of year, right now, they look like grapes on a vine. There's so many huckleberries and salmon berries and salal berries and Oregon grape. So much food in this area. It's crazy.
It's amazing. I just think it's projects like this, and I go on the website. I've been on the website a few times, Olympic Project website.
Yeah, we're updating it still.
Well, I mean, it just looks. This is perhaps, for want of a better term, it just looks so legitimate, and that's not what you expect in Sasquatch research in general. And I'm not being dismissive or mean to anybody now. I don't mean it to put anybody else down. But it looks like a well-organized, scientifically based project. And then when I saw it, I'm like, oh yes, that's what they're all supposed to look like. This is what we're supposed to be doing. This is what we're supposed to be doing. And yeah, I would admonish myself and everybody out there, if you're thinking of getting into this, like you said, plan out the course of your research, even if it's you're researching things like the woo or a paranormal aspect of it. You can apply the same principles to it, more or less. You can apply those principles. I think it's a fascinating subject, and I wonder, other people are wondering right now as well with this whole 2020, the never-ending surprises that are coming out. Perhaps, we're in the right sort of time period for a reveal of this kind, for something like this to be brought to the fore and proved. It would be fantastic. After all, essentially, I suppose, the 53 years since our paddy footage came to light, we haven't really had anything significant like that anyway to show the world. What are your bets on discovery? Do you think this is something that could take place in the near future, or do you think that the finance and the scientific will to know isn't really there on a large enough basis to make that discovery?
Yeah, I don't think they're there quite yet, but I'm such an optimist. I've seen leaps and bounds. Growing up in Scotland, even I was fascinated with Yeti and Nessie and even Bigfoot. Yeah. And from this journey, my journey, I've seen leaps and bounds differences. Now I'm seeing, academia kind of coming out, like I said before, out of the closet a little bit. They're interested. They're starting to see certain pieces of evidence, whether it's hair, track cast, nest, you name it, out there. They're interested. People are seeing something, and things are happening. And, in my friend, the late great Dr. John Bindernagel, fantastic, amazing guy. I learned so much from him, as many did. Just an amazing guy. Put his his livelihood as a wildlife biologist on the line. He wanted to make this subject less taboo. That was his goal. He saw a problem with academia not looking at this serious enough. And so does Dr. Jeff Meldrum and John Myanzinski and Grover Cranch, you name it. But now I see his wishes coming into fruition. I see people actually being interested. And so I definitely on the horizon see I think there's going to be some amazing things found, shared, discovered. I think, and it's not just the Olympic Project. Trust me, there's many other great individuals and groups out there. I mean, that I have a lot of respect for. And it's not a lot of people look at whether it's Bigfoot or UFOs or you name it, cryptids. It could be NASCAR, it could be fishing. There's always this competition. No competition within the Olympic Project. If someone else has got a piece of evidence and they want to share it or not, just I just want them to do their due diligence.
Yeah.
Get to the bottom of it. I'm hoping that I'm rooting for you. I'm rooting for you.
Yeah.
And if I could finance you, I would. But really, with the Inland Project, we try to lead by example. We're not perfect by no means. Half of us are not even scientists. We just got a lot of field experience and stuff. But we do work with them. We gladly accept academia. And I see a real down the road here. I do see a lot of good things happening with science and citizen scientists and your average person. They're getting interested, and I'm liking it. I'm liking what I'm seeing. I'm excited about the future.
I think that's amazing. And similar to what you're saying there about sharing evidence and sharing success, essentially in this genre, your success is my success. It's all of our success because we all have the same basic principle in mind. Shane, I think we'll leave it there, but I just want to thank you for talking to me. Learned a lot. I knew it would be interesting. I knew it would be fascinating. Just for the people out there listening, where can they find you? How can they get involved in your projects and the Olympic project?
Yeah, I mean, olympicproject.com. You can find us on your local computer. We're updating the website, so be patient. Forgive us. olympicproject.com. I also run a podcast semi-weekly, Monster X Radio, and check that out. We talk a lot about the updates.
I like Monster X Radio.
Yeah, a lot of updates with our nest and stuff like that, and we get a lot of great guests on there. We'll need to have you on sometime, Andrew, for
I'd
sure.
love to.
Oh, yeah, definitely gonna have you on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so that, and I mean, I'm on Facebook, Shane Corson on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. You can follow me there. Be honest with you, I do share tidbits, but I don't share a whole lot on social media. It's kind of a nasty world, and no offense to anybody out there, but I don't owe you anything. Just as much as you don't owe me anything. I don't claim to know anything. I got my ideas, my opinions, my experiences, and I'm interested in everybody else's. Don't get me wrong. I do share some stuff periodically, and the Lent Project does, but we're so serious about, and I am definitely serious about this research. I don't have anybody funding me. I do it all by myself, and I love it. I'm not complaining. I live in an amazing area. I get reports around me, and I get to work with amazing people within the Lent Project and be involved with a lot of individuals out there that have just seriously blessed me over the years with their knowledge, their experiences, their techniques, all of that stuff. So, that's how you can find me, and I will share stuff periodically. But Andrew, hey, thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
It was awesome, absolutely fantastic, and I'll definitely take you up on that offer and plug you for all of your Scotchometric and other contacts once we stop recording. Thanks so much for coming on, Shane. Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Bye.
Take care.